I'm Slavka KUTSAY. My colleague is Olga SNYADANKO, and these are film episodes.
Thank you for joining us. The 10th anniversary DocuDays festival was held in Kiev. Films about legends of the fashion industry will be shown in Ukraine. A story about forgotten Ukrainian actress who won the heart of Polish General Władysław Anders.
In the spotlight tonight in this year's DocuDays festival, the only international human rights film festival in Ukraine. The 10th anniversary event took place in the last week of March. Our correspondents attended the festival and present the following report.
Even Kiev's capricious and stormy March weather didn't stop people interested in documentaries and protection of human rights from attending the festival. The 10th DocuDays International Film Festival is a unique laboratory where you can learn about different cultural and social problems. Roma Dream was one of the most anxiously awaited documentaries at the festival, with a standing room-only audience. One of the characters in the film, Renata, protects the rights of Roma people not only on the screen, but as a lawyer in real life.
I think that although you are Roma, you can be successful. I know this from my experience and try to show that it doesn't matter where you are from, you can get an education.
The discussion immersed the audience even more in the complexities of the topic.
About 10,000 Roma people don't have IDs, meaning passports.
Not only films were in the center of attention. For the second year in a row, the Living Library presents living and speaking books ranging from Buddhists to transgendered people. International student and living book Marcel shares his impressions about being read.
No, it wasn't difficult. I was talking about things that I know very well, so it wasn't difficult. I'm happy to provide some information. Communication is much better than reading newspapers or watching television or surfing the internet.
Comparative analysis of revolutions in Egypt, Malaysia, Ukraine, Venezuela and Zimbabwe helped American director Ben Moses convey his message.
Anyone who gets power always will become somewhat corrupted, because power does that to us as humans. These festivals are wonderful because people learn things that they don't really know. I learned much from making my film.
The film had both a chilling effect on the audience and created controversy among the viewers.
The film seems manipulative. It's filled with emotion and emotional music. Thanks to the view of the American director, events in Ukraine are put into the international context. It's important to bear in mind that we live in a globalized world and we are not the only ones here.
The Open Access Ukrainian Almanac presented 5 stories showing the importance of fighting for the right to know and the uses of the law governing access to information. The humor of the Meshihiria episode was especially well received by the viewers. Festival contestants competed in several categories. The Scottish film Pouters, directed by Paul Fegan, won in the docu-short category, while the Docu-Right Award went to The Girl from the South, directed by Argentinian José Luis Garcia. Lithuanian director Giende Beinarute's film Conversation on Serious Topics won the DocuLife Award. The main student jury prize was awarded to the film Documentarian, directed by Latvians Ivan Zviedris and Inese Klava. At the DocuDays Film Festival, you can get a better understanding of protection of human rights by watching movies, reading living books and communicating with filmmakers. So, as the festival motto says, there is a choice. Olga GERMAN, Natalya CHABANOVA, Mahila School of Journalism.
One of the key interests of the festival was the Arab Spring. Joining us in the studio is Natalya CHULOVSKA, an independent international journalist who moderated the Arab Spring section. Welcome to the studio, Natalya.
Thanks for inviting.
We have a few questions for you tonight. So tell us, what makes film about the Arab Spring interesting for Ukrainians?
And I think it's like a proven case because the halls were full during the Q&A sessions and during the movies. I think because the events in the Arab world are very now living through the events very similar to what we are living after the aftermath of the Orange Revolution, when the people are trying to understand. So what's happening with the society when the dictator is gone but democracy is not yet there? You know, is it these chaotic times when you probably have a lot of chaos? More secure rather than strong hand and things like that. So the amount of audience which came to the screening somehow showed that though we don't have a lot of events in the news programs about what's happening in the Arab world now, 2 years after the Arab awakening, the people want to know. They really have some appeal.
So was there a film that impressed you most?
I mean, of course, there were 4 movies, two from Egypt, one from Tunisia, and one from Yemen. But I think one of the best was probably the movies Back to the Square, made by the Canadian-Czech director Peter Lom, and it tells the story about more or less basic injustice of the people. Few protagonists who show their life a year after the Arab Spring, and they show if their life improved, or the cases when they still face not really easy life and like injustice. And what's probably the most interesting thing was that for me as a journalist being in Egypt, and I know the director heard it at some other festival, that this movie was made as if it was made by the Egyptian, by the local, and I guess that was a great chance for the people to see.
And we know that you've traveled extensively in the Arab world. What are some of your insights that could become subject of another movie?
I think for me, I mean, I was mainly writing, but now it would be definitely very, very interesting to show exactly what the generation which was on the edge of the process in the front, how do they find an inspiration and to go on their fight, to not stay in power, but somehow influence and keep the politician accountable, because somehow this is the people who were the most active participants. They were a lot of young people, the people of our age, and there is a lot to share. And probably sometimes we don't have some answers, and maybe we know them, but just when the people would hear for the Ukrainians would be interesting if that answers would be answered by somebody from Tunisia or Egypt, and then we share a lot.
Natalya, thank you for your answers and thank you for being with us tonight. So, another film festival started in Kiev. Harper's Bazaar presented fashion-related documentaries. The festival began on the 21st of March in Dnipropetrovsk and will travel to 2 more cities. Our correspondents will fill us in on more details about the event.
The fashion world changes all the time. You can even see the approaching revolution in clothes. You can see and feel everything in clothes.
The Eye Has to Travel, an intimate film portrait of Diana Vreeland, one of the most powerful women of the 20th century, whose influence changed the face of fashion, opened the first Ukrainian fashion film festival. The main goal of the Harper's Bazaar I Love You festival is to present stories of world fashion legends.
The idea is to show just the beauty of fashion, but it's about that, because it's not just about fashion, that's about culture. Because nowadays you cannot say that fashion is something aside. Fashion is something you wear every day. And, even if you don't think about that, that's still what you do.
Organizers believe that the Harper's Bazaar I Love You will become a leading showcase for the common ground shared by fashion and film in our country. The world-famous Ukrainian top model Olga KHIMYAK agrees that such occasion in Kyiv will help to promote new ideas.
This is so important for, especially for our country, where we don't have any kind of like good education in fashion. So a lot of people which want join fashion, they can do it by visiting this kind of events and watching these kind of movies.
People can enjoy 2 more films at the festival: Funny Face with Audrey Hepburn and Have to Marry a Millionaire with Marilyn Monroe. The festival will take place in Kyiv from 28th to 31st of March and then travel to Donetsk and Kharkiv. Olga IZHYK, Natalya CHULOVSKA, Mogila School of Journalism.
We're fortunate in having the opportunity to see special interest in films not only at festivals but also at our university's film club, which began its existence in 1994. In our studio today is one of the club's curators, Kostyantin Yakubenko, who can tell us more about the club's activities. Good evening, Kostya.
Hi, thanks for inviting me here.
So what is special about your club?
A lot of. Well, first of all, we are going to celebrate our 20th anniversary next year. Second, we are open to our visitors 6 days per week. And third, we offer our audience a structured, consistent flow of structured set of topical films.
Mm-hmm. And how do you choose what films you would like to screen?
Well, we tend to choose films that generate discussion, and we put them on 3 scales when selecting them. First, we choose those films that have the highest cinematic value. Also, we try to select those which are relevant to some specific social, economic, or political problem, and also we try to choose those films which are relevant to a specific date. For instance, we are going to put on screen contemporary films about Chernobyl. In April next month, we have The Anatomy of Financial Crisis, which is example of just urgent problem of nowadays. And of course, we have a lot of classical cinema that is to comply with cinematic value of our selection criteria.
And what films are the most popular among your audience?
Well, you know that we position ourselves as a non-mainstream movie club, that is why it is very difficult to determine which films are the most popular. I would say that what we have to do is to strike a balance between serious films and entertaining films. And often entertaining films generate little debate, but too serious films bring too few people. So what we have to do is to strike the balance between huge audience and productive and extensive discussion after the show.
Do you invite celebrities?
Well, we are always open to young and to every Ukrainian film producer and filmmaker. And by the way, the next month we are going to have at least 4 film directors. So stay tuned and be our visitors. Usually they are scheduled into our program on the priority basis.
Okay, Kostyan, let's talk about your development. What have changed since 1994?
Well, I think the most substantial change is that from year to year we have more discussions after watching the films, and our cinema club is increasingly becoming more something that remembers a true club, not just a place where one can watch a film. So this is a place to meet new people, to discuss urgent problems of nowadays, to communicate with the modern film directors, and also my thesis is to invite as much volunteers to Cinema Club as possible. Please, visitors, please like us on Facebook. Young film directors, please join us and show your films and receive some feedback from our audience. And you're always welcome to our Cinema
Okay,
Club.
so you're doing an announcement. So what coming up next?
Well, As I already mentioned, we are going to invite at least 4 film directors to present their works in April. Also, we'll have a special set of films dedicated to Chernobyl disaster, which will be comprised of both documentaries and contemporary Ukrainian fiction. We will continue the problem of films related to the problem of contemporary financial crisis. And we will have, please stay tuned of our special events about modern genocide in Rwanda, which is going to be shown with the United Nations. Also, we are going to show you the restored version of Oleksandr Dovzhenko's Land in the musical, on the music of modern ethno group Daha Braha, so a lot of things will be happening. Stay tuned.
And this is all for free, right?
Yep, exactly. And here I would like to stress that our cinema club is free to visit. It's not just free of charge, it's free. You don't require any registration, you don't require anything. Just join us and become a member of our club.
Konstantin, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Have a nice evening. Bye.
We'll leave you tonight with a special segment on Ukrainianness as a firm place to stand, rediscovering it in the biographies of epoch icons as a perfect lever. That is Bogdan Nahailov's personal interpretation of the Archimedean idea. The Ukrainian British historian and publicist with a rich experience in international affairs met with episodes during his visit to Kiev. He told us how he transformed his hobby into a project based on archival materials about Ukrainian modern history and great figures unrecognized as being Ukrainian. The source is called the Humanitarian Eclectics channel. You can find it on YouTube. Now let's listen to the result of one of the investigations Mr. Nahailov conducted in his free time in Africa.
While I was in Angola, in my spare time, in the evenings, on the internet, piecing together the history of Western Ukraine in the 30s from the point of view of music, contacting relatives, contacting institutes and museums in Lviv and elsewhere, trying to put together the jigsaw puzzle. And then I've discovered this character that I'm particularly proud of making a documentary film about, because I think she's a Ukrainian woman that has not really been appreciated, her achievement, though it's a very controversial one from a Ukrainian point of view, and her name is Renata Bogdanska Anders, or aka Irena Yarosevich. And in a nutshell, Irena Yarosevich was a good plastunka, good Ukrainian girl growing up in Western Ukraine, from a very active Ukrainian family. Her uncle was the leading composer, Ivan Franko's friend, Ostap Nishankivsky, etc., etc. And then she sang in a jazz band, and she became the muse of Bogdan Veselovsky, the great composer of the late 1930s who popularized Ukrainian tango melodies and adapted them to Ukrainian things. This was all suppressed in the Soviet period, and so we don't know about it. And this woman later ended up singing in a group that was largely a Jewish one in Lviv during the Soviet period, 39-41, and then became a singer in the Polish army, because she had then ended up in Siberia, and she left with the Poles that were allowed by Stalin to form an army and leave and join up with the British forces in Italy. She became a film star. She acted in films with Vittorio De Sica and Anna Magnani.
Credi proprio che sia così facile rapirmi? Dipende da come vuoi passare la domenica.
She married the general that was the commander of the Polish Free Forces, General Anders, and she became known as the first lady of the Polska Emigracja, of the Polish diaspora. And just before her death, 2 years ago, she was awarded with Poland's highest award. Very beautiful, gifted actress, singer, etc., who was a Ukrainian. Though she kept quiet about her Ukrainian side in her later years, though I did find that she did record some songs in Ukrainian towards the end of her life. So there was a theme that in one life, so many aspects of Ukrainian, Polish, Jewish, Russian, Soviet history, that it was begging for somebody to put it together.
I'm Slavka KUTSAY.
And I'm Olga SNYADANKO.
For all of us here at Nauk Mađe School episodes, have a good night and good luck. See you next Friday. Take care.